Back a long way. Ashraf Ghori, please come on up.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Thank you for the lovely introduction, James. And Assalamu alaikum. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. I will be talking a little bit about some of the experiences I've had as an artist. My name is Ashraf Ghori. I'm the CEO of a digital creative agency in Dubai called Expanse CGI, and I'm an artist. So over the course of my little talk, I want to share some of the experiences that I've had, maybe share with you some of the things which got me started, my first drawing, for example, and some of my creative inspirations, and so on. The theme for today's presentation is very rightly ink, and there's like no single solitary force of nature which has actually inspired me more than the idea of having ink on paper. I think the previous speaker, Alex, started off with the painting of a caveman, and I intend to do a very similar thing as well. This is known by most caveman painting experts, to be a faithful reproduction of one of my earliest known artworks. So, as you can see, it's perfect, and all my work looked exactly like that. And I was living in my perfect little world. And everything that I was producing I was just very rightly pleased with myself. And until this guy showed up. I call him a mystery man. This is like an idea of what he looked like. It's probably a friend of my dad's who showed up at my house once. And he looked at my perfect little drawing, and he took it and he started scribbling some lines over it. I was like, wait a minute, it's perfect. How can anything that's perfect, how can you improve on it? It's just not possible. And then he did this to it. And that to me was my first true inspiration. I was probably like 4 years old or 5 years old at the time. But whoever this guy was, I thank him because he made me see things a little differently than what I used to. And this sort of manifested itself later in my other work. So moving on from here, the next major inspiration that I came across was, of course, comic books. I don't know from where I managed to get a hold of a couple of Marvel DC comics, and that was it. That to me was an eye-opener to what was possible in terms of creativity. And the handful of comics I had, I became obsessed with them. I was reading them, rereading them, and I was drawing out every panel. And I was like, I wouldn't trace it. I would recreate, and I would see and draw. And this to me kept me going. And till one day I actually got into trouble at school. So it was around that time. I was really young. It was and comics and school they just didn't go along. And everyone's like, no, you don't bring comics to school. So and I would do exactly that. I would sneak them in, and I'd always be scribbling on all my books. It became a little annoying for all the teachers, and word reached the principal. So one fine day, the principal just barged in, and I was drawing that on my book. So he took this little drawing and paraded around everywhere. It's like, hey, look, everybody, this is Ashraf. And I was like, and everybody started laughing. Look, he even has a question mark on his head. So, at that time I was like, okay, on the outside I was a little hurt because, you know, I was being made kind of like a laughing stock. But on the inside I was thinking, wait a minute, you know, that's not too bad. Because look at it, it's not a bad drawing. It's got the anatomy in the right place, and you know, it's not too bad. You know, it's pretty cool. But no one else agreed with me. So I said, what do these guys know? There's just the principal and the class teacher and the rest of the class. So I carried on doing my thing, and I knew I had it in me. And, you know, I'll show them. So I worked harder on my artwork. And about a year later, there was an inter-class competition, art competition. And luckily, you know, because I was prepared, I did something. I created an artwork that was far superior than all the other guys put together. And everybody agreed, and of course, I won the prize. And the same principal came in, and now he handed me this. In front of the whole school, I was getting the ultimate Oscar Prize of Outstanding Achievement in Art, and it was made out to Master Ashraf Ghori, actually. So I think that's how it used to be, because it was like a British board school. So this was like a little achievement. I was like, yes, you know. So it was like a little inspiration to move on to the next thing, because I had it in me now that, okay, I have a little something in me, my life has direction, let me practice a little bit more, let me work a little bit harder, and maybe I might end up being some sort of a rich, famous artist. And inshallah, one day I will. But, so, I kept working, and one day when I was 13 years old, it was summer, it was the time before the internet, and back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth. There was, I found like time hanging heavy on my shoulders, and I was like, okay, let me try and take my artwork and try and get it published. At that time, there were two publications for children, and one was called Junior News, and the other one was called Young Times. And they're both somewhere on Sheikh Zayed Road, hardly 15 minutes away from where I lived. And they were circulated really widely, you know, all across Saudi, Kuwait. So it was a really popular magazine, both of them. So I went to Junior News first because a year before, they published an article about me, and in that, it was a little kid, it was sort of like a one-page article, and it said, super artist creates his own comics. I still have that with me somewhere. So I went to them first and say, hey, because you guys really appreciate my work, what do you think? Maybe I can do something for you guys, you know? Maybe you can publish my work, or I can sort of illustrate stories for you. So the editor and the art director had like one look at my work, and it was like, and that's what he said, come back when you are good. So it was like an outright rejection, and I said, what does this editor of this leading magazine know anything about art? I'll show them. So I went back and I worked a little bit harder, prepared my portfolio a little bit better. I went to see the editor of another magazine called Young Times. Now, thankfully this time, the editor of that magazine saw potential in my work, and he gave me a little gig. Oh, you know what, I have this story, can you illustrate this for me? I said, okay. I went in, I put all my hard work, my soul into that drawing, and I submitted it. And it was like an outright hit, and he loved it. So, okay, that's going in the next issue. And before I realized, I was actually doing regular work for the Young Times magazine. As a student, my relationship with the magazine lasted for over 10 years. And they actually had to lie about my age to get my paycheck out, because you know, I was like 13 or so. So I think you had to be like 18 years old to actually get a name out. But yeah, I was I was, I don't know, making like $1,000 for that time. It was like amazing, you know, for a kid with $1,000. That's a lot of money. So I carried on doing that, and then I moved to the U.S. For my studies. And during this time, I came across sort of some of the inspirations. Which, yeah, you notice in that slide that my artwork has greatly improved because it's not my artwork. These are some of my creative inspirations that I follow, and they have guided me. They're my mentors who are oblivious to my existence, and I've followed their work. You know, it's like Simon Bisley, Barry Windsor-Smith, Bernie Wrightson, Jim Lee, Arthur Adams, George Perez, and the list goes on. There's like all these people that, you know, I would study their work and I would essentially improve myself. So I got into doing sort of more creative, more detailed work. And this was the first time my work was being published in comics. So I got like nationwide publication with independent comics. In the US in the early 90s. And so I was like, I was always trying to improve myself. And well, I wanted to ask some, especially the creatives of over here, the creatives of Dubai. Does anyone have imaginary friends or ever? No. Of course not, because that would be silly, right? Yeah.
Admit in public, for sure.
Okay, thank you. I'll take that as a yes. Okay. But I don't have imaginary friends either, in case you're wondering. But I do have an imaginary boss. And this guy is hard. He makes me work hard. He's never, ever happy with anything I've ever done. He always makes me try and do better. You know, he's always overly critical of my work, and it makes me essentially keep trying to improve myself that much more. And he keeps going, not my tempo, or something like that, you know. And so this, having this boss over my head, this virtual boss over my head, sort of in effect made me try and get out of my comfort zone. So I always try and take an initiative. It's kind of like a calculated risk, where I always try and make something else, you know, that I'm not used to doing. So essentially to improve my skill set, or just for the fact of trying out something new. Of course, I'm not going to go and start repairing cars because that's just, you know, I'm not good at it. But in keeping in my industry, I always try and push a little bit further. I got into film. I got into, you know, there's comics. There's, you know, I did work for something for the fashion industry. I did work for the perfume industry. You know, so different things. You know, always trying to get up. Like most of us try and, you know, I think we become a little complacent, being, you know, happy with whatever we're doing. We're okay with our little. You know, comfort zone. But no one told that to Jack. Of course, Jack, he loved drawing comics. He wanted to create something, you know. He didn't succeed in his teens. He didn't succeed when he was in his 20s. He didn't succeed in his 30s. Jack Kirby was 44 years old when he created Fantastic Four. And then came the X-Men and the Hulk, and he also created a whole slew of other characters like Captain America and so on. Too many to list over here. But Jack did that at a later part in his life. And if we take anything from his life, is our best work is yet to come. So if we've got some kind of a regional award this year, so who knows, maybe next year you can aim for an Oscar or something, you know? So taking that and improving on yourself and getting out of the comfort zone, That's something you can probably learn from Jack Kirby. So to run it all off, that's where I started, from perfection. And then I worked backwards, and I got hungrier, and I got, I started improving myself. I started realizing that I am imperfect, and I wanted to improve myself that much more. So this is, I'm just sharing with you a couple of artworks I did this week. And this, to me, is nowhere close, and I can find a million mistakes, and so much more I can improve on in this. So this is essentially what I want to, if there's anything that I want you guys to take with you, from my little talk over here, is maybe try and get out of the comfort zone. Try and take a few risks, take some initiatives, and get out there. And maybe you never know what you might end up creating. And I suppose the best is yet to come. So thank you. And if there's any questions.
Does anyone have a question? I like the idea. Get out of the comfort zone, and just the best is. I like the best is yet to come. As I'm knocking on 50's door, I'm thinking it can only get better than this. Is for real.
Talking about your work at the moment, do you still work with a lot of paper and ink at the moment? I know you do your comics, but in your daily work, in your main job, or are you still on computers and animation?
I think it was kind of a necessary evil around 2000. That's when I started moving on from my trusty Croquill pen and ink and India ink and my designer's gouache paints to digital, because it was just so much easier, because I used to work for a lot of agencies and things like that. And to send the work across was just so much easier when you created something digitally. So initially I would draw out the elements by hand, scan them in, and then do the finishes on digital. And now I've kind of like moved on completely to creating 100% digital artworks. I miss that. I eventually hope I get a chance to go back and revisit and actually create, hands-on work.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add, or a question, or a comment? Swati?
Do you find that...
You'll have to yell. You'll have to be very loud.
Do you find a difference, like whenever that earlier on you said that you used to use a lot of paper and now you completely migrated towards the computer? What is the difference in terms of the output that you get out of it? Like looking at this one, you said there's tons that you can improve on already, and I believe this is all digital. Versus on paper, like what is the journey, or how different is it, and how satisfactory is it for you? How content are you between two mediums?
I think in terms of satisfaction, I was probably more satisfied with the hands-on approach when I was actually drawing hands-on on paper. But it's more of kind of mimicking and trying to get as close to the original as possible. And that's what I was trying to achieve with my digital work. So it's more of a, at this point, it's trying to get there.
Ashraf, absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you again.
So if we take one thing away from